Hello and welcome into another episode of the Odds and Audibles podcast. I am your host, Jared Mack. Joining me today is our good friend, Erik Skopil, and today is Monday, which means it's a Monday Mailbag. Erik, are you excited?
I gotta be honest. We haven't done one of these in a little bit, and these questions are good. So I'm ready to get into it. Sometimes the questions are not as good, and this is a good batch. This is a very good batch. I'm excited.
Erik's high hopes for these questions remind us that to use the hashtag Odds and Audibles hashtag on Twitter. It's easy for us to find, and it's one of the best hashtags we got. So we might as well jump right in. Question number one from at Joey Bonin33. Bonin. I'm sorry that I'm mispronouncing this, but Joey, your question is first overall. Joey asks, which 2022 recruit do you expect to make the biggest impact this season? Hashtag Odds and Audibles. Thank you, Joey, again for using the hashtag Odds and Audibles. We appreciate it. Erik, I think this is a good question. I don't know if I have a front runner for this question or for the answer, I should say. But I think it could be somebody like Kyler Casper. I think he could be like a number one kind of guy. I just feel like he or Jaleel Tucker were my 1 and 2. They just feel like they're in a position where there isn't a lot of depth and that they could make an immediate impact regardless of, how talented they may be or may not be.
And when you say Casper as a number one guy, you mean number one answer here, not as the team's number one receiver, right?
No, he's going to be the team's number one wide receiver. It's going to be the shock of the century. It's Kyler Casper or bust.
Move out of the way, Dante Thornton, Troy Franklin, Chris Hudson, all those guys. I almost think it's just like it's a position group, and my answer is whichever corner from this class is most ready, probably. Mm-hmm. Josh Connerly is probably the answer most expect here, but I don't know if he's going to play much because, I don't think this offensive line is going to rotate. That's what we've heard thus far, at least in spring, and I believe it. I mean, based upon the answer, it wasn't didn't really leave a lot of room for we're tinkering with it. It was pretty hard, fast, that's not what we're going to do, and kind of dismissive of the previous staff doing it.
Very dismissive.
Yeah. And I actually probably was more understanding of why they did it than you and Matt have been, just because I think it was a response to the COVID year that they ended up carrying over. Anyway, we're getting down to a topic we don't have to jump too into, but I kind of understood it, but I also think my preference always has been put your best 5 out there. And my expectation is, despite Connerly being a 5-star recruit, he's not going to be in the best 5 left tackle of the offensive line starting spots. Is the position where it's I don't know if you have a clear-cut fit. I think Stephen Jones fits there. He works there. We've seen TJ Bass work there as well. Bass has basically said to Jared he prefers being an interior guy, so I expect that's where he'll be. But anyway, so that's why I'm not picking Connerly. And the cornerback thing, I think we've talked so much about it. It's already kind of put out here and known as they don't got a lot of depth, and they've got a couple guys you feel good about. Manning's injury maybe throws a little bit of a question mark in there, although all indications were positive that he can make a quick recovery. We'll see what kind of takes place this fall when we get into it. Maybe we'll get something from Lanning in the interim to kind of give us a better feel for that. Maybe Manning will talk about it. I don't know. But ultimately, I think there's a spot available in the 2 deep for a true freshman if in 2022 at corner, if you're good enough. And so between Jaleel Florence, who I'd probably lean towards just because he got here first, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's the best prospect, and Jaleel Tucker and Kamari Terrell, I think one of those 3 guys is probably the answer ultimately. Justice Lowe is another name just because he got here early at receiver. I agree with Jared. There's room for that sort of a spot. You kind of think through some of the other top tier guys. If you go down the recruiting list, Jordan James would have been a real easy answer a month ago, but the running back room is filled up a little. And now it's kind of is he best case 3rd or 4th? I think it felt like he might push to be in that conversation for 2, or obviously it would have been 2 or 3 before they added the transfers. But now I don't think he's that high up the list. The inside linebackers, I think Devon Jackson and Harrison Taggart are going to be good football players, but we're going to load it there. I mean, I know it was a weakness last year because of depth, but they had a year from hell from an injury perspective, and now they look really good. So, I'll go with one of the corners.
I think that's totally fair. Both corner and wide receiver were the 2 position groups where I felt that there could be an impact guy. That's why I picked one from each of them. I think Jaleel Florence and Jaleel Tucker are, I think, the most talented incoming freshmen. Kamari Terrell is another talented incoming freshman, but he's more athleticism than anything else, while Jaleel Tucker and Jaleel Florence are both athletically gifted and they have skills at the quarterback position. I did really think about Josh Connerly just because of the transfers. He could be like the second string left tackle just out of necessity.
I think he will be. I think he will be.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's going to play very much unless someone gets hurt.
Right, but that's the thing. There might be an injury.
Could be.
And that's when somebody that's something like when Josh is going to play, unless they move Dawson Jaramillo into left tackle and then they still just have him wait. But his talent could be too significant to just have him sit on the bench if there's an injury. I think that's a realistic possibility, but just out of pure necessity and depth, it's going to be a wide receiver or a cornerback making an incoming freshman play.
Can I follow up really quick before we get to the second one?
I guess.
Good. All right. Let me. That's the charm. I think even if there is an injury at left tackle, and you brought up Jaramillo, I just wanted to say it because I think it's probably accurate. I would imagine Dawson and Josh will be fighting to be that first left tackle or that first tackle in case of an injury. My hunch is Jaramillo's experience. I mean, I was back looking at the snap.
I mean, number. Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
Jaramillo had almost as many snaps as the starting five guys we're talking about coming back. Like he had like 360 and these guys are in the 400 something. That's actually, by the way, if you want to geek out over offensive line stuff, they do keep the by snap counts on GoDucks.com. You can go find that under the media note guides. But they had that, and Jaramillo played so much last year that he's like a pseudo starter. So I do think, like in theory, if there's an injury to a tackle, he probably slides in, and if there's an injury to an interior guy, it's probably going to be Jackson Powers Johnson or Dawson because he's all played there too. So, but that would we talk about like I think Connerly would be on the depth chart as the second left tackle probably, but Dawson might be the one who like actually would come in and play if that happened, hypothetically, obviously.
Right. One more name, Dave Iuli, and then we'll end it at that as a little interior alignment. Moving on to question number 2 from @Nash Duccaneer. Nash, great to hear from you again. Erik and Jared, you both recently did a 7-on-7 mock draft. Parentheses, Team Mack all the way, and parentheses. I did not make that up. Duccaneer put it in there.
That's kind of hurtful. That's kind of hurtful, Nash.
Team Mack was just better. Better coaching, better drafting. We do more research. We do more advanced analytics. We're just a better overall program.
Better coaching. We didn't even get to the coaching part. It was a draft.
So, Nash continues and says, so I'm curious, who would you each take first overall in a mock 11-on-11 draft? #Odds and Audibles. Thanks, Nash Duccaneer, for the #Odds and Audibles. First overall in 11-on-11 draft.
It's a good question.
This is a tough one. I don't know who has first pick here. Since I'm talking, I'm going to assume it's me.
Well, why don't you start? I had the first pick in the 7-on-7, and this will make my job easier, I guess, of rebutting it.
Fair. I will take Bo Nix first overall because I think an 11-on-11 draft compared to 7-on-7, I think quarterback is way more important. It's why the best teams in the country usually have the best quarterback in the country or one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So if I can get the best quarterback on Oregon's roster, I'll take it. Erik?
So if I was picking first overall, I would make the same pick. If I was picking now second overall and we were doing the same exercise, that's where it does get difficult. 2 names came to mind. One was a player. Neither were drafted in our previous draft.
Okay. All right.
One would be Noah Sewell because I just think he's your best defensive player. Maybe there's another name I wanted to toss out. No, I don't think that's quite there yet. The other is I just think offensive line's of value, and Oregon has some really good offensive linemen. And I just did my whole left tackle spiel. I don't know if it's going to be left tackle. I just think TJ Bass is your best offensive lineman. So like I might argue that he should be one of your first 3 or 4 picks if you're doing this. I think you take a quarterback almost every time in these scenarios, especially when I think there's a little bit of gap, but kind of hard afterwards. I think Sewell, I'd probably, if I was doing a top 3, I'd go Nix, Sewell, Bass, probably.
I think that's respectable because I would honestly draft it like it were an NFL draft.
Throw my mind. Yeah,
And
through my head went.
it's like, okay, quarterbacks number 1, defensive lineman, edge rushers number 2, and then probably a cornerback number 3, and then whatever else afterwards. But for Oregon, especially this year, they don't have an elite edge guy, at least that we've seen. I mean,
Yeah.
DJ Johnson was, a second coming of, Jesus Christ at the spring game, but we don't know if that's what it'll be during the season. And so I would go with TJ Bass at probably pick number 2 as well, or pick number 3. I guess, I don't know, it'd be a toss-up between Sewell and Bass for me. I think I actually might go Bass because of Sewell's limited abilities on the defensive end as a pass coverage linebacker. I'd go higher upside.
When I paused to say there was someone else I was thinking about, it was DJ Johnson, because I had the same thought of like, what positions do you prioritize in hypothetical draft? It's like edge rushers. But I also am like, am I going to say he is the second or third most valuable player on the team off of one spring game? Whereas you have Sewell, who's a Pac-12 freshman of the year in 20. He was first team all conference in 21 and could be the Butkus Award winner this year. Certainly going to be like a name to know there. And then Bass was first team all conference as a left tackle last year. So that's sort of self-explanatory. DJ is a guy who, I feel like sometimes it sounds like we're being critical, but it's just like, I want to see a bigger sample size. The guy's played here forever and hasn't made a huge impact. And that's partly because I don't think it's all his fault. He's moved around, but I'm not ready to say, again, he's like the second coming of Kayvon Thibodeau off one spring game where he worked, Bailey Jaramillo and Feo Belalu.
Yeah, it's hard. I think there's a clear-cut number 1, and then that's about it, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Where would you put Gonzalez? I think Christian Gonzalez, based upon the position value, would probably be up there pretty high too. I know we're going. We asked for what, like the number 1 overall pick, and we're now debating. Like,
I think we're on 4.
Pick 4 or 5 now.
Yeah, I think he's up there for sure because he's the best cornerback on the team. But how good is he? Would I rather have Christian Gonzalez in the hopes that he becomes a number 1 corner at 4, or can I get him at pick number 8? Like, can I wheel and deal? Can I get like 7, or can I get Dante Thornton at 4? Because he's, I think, by far like going to be the best wide receiver on the team. And if I have the best quarterback and the best wide receiver, that's an advantage. Even though if Erik, you might get the best cornerback, I'll take Thornton over Christian Gonzalez, which again, no disrespect to Christian Gonzalez. I just think Thornton's going to be really, really damn good. And Gonzalez, like other players on the roster, just don't have, like DJ Johnson, they're just not a proven defensive guy yet. He looks great. He looks the part physically. His stats are pretty good, but we have to see a full season of him at Oregon, not just at Colorado.
Agreed.
Yeah. Sorry, we went into a big rant over there.
I love it. No, I think that's what they want.
I've expected us to pull out like our big board from last time and just start going through it and having a real 11 on 11.
We should have just done an 11 on 11 draft right now. Just started it without any planning, and it's like, oh, sorry, the rest of the questions don't get answered. It was a mailbag, and then it became an 11 on 11 draft. Our bad.
2-question mailbag. All right, we're gonna make it a 3-question mailbag coming up from at Robbie FZ450. His first of 2 questions was, what was the score of the 7-on-7 game that we drafted last week?
Great question.
It was 42-0 Team Mack. We're just better.
Unbelievable.
Question number 2 is, who was a sleeper pick to break out at each position this year? You got a response to the score?
I don't think it was 42-0. Like, come on, it wasn't that lopsided. Put it in the let people. I want to hear in the comments if they thought it was that lopsided. We didn't get a lot of comments. I think the only person I've seen really like lay aside here of like who they thought had the better team was our buddy Nash, and he went Team Mac. But you guys have you guys have history or something. You guys are like buddies, so I'm not even.
Yeah, well, I paid him off to say that, so thank you, Nash.
Yeah, good job. Well, not good job, Nash. I should have paid somebody else. Yeah, I'm not even gonna. We have no idea what that would be. I think it'd be closer than 42-0. I'll put it that way. I mean, Jared might have had a better team. I don't know if I agree with that entirely, but I don't think it would have been that lopsided. All right. This is before we even get to the question. Can Robbie explain what his Twitter handle means? FZ450. it's like I don't even have any concept of what those numbers could mean or the letters afterwards. So usually I'm pretty good at guessing these.
I was gonna say,
but this one's tough. Anyway, all right. So let's get to this. Who is the sleeper pick to break out at each position? I don't think we can do one at quarterback, to be totally honest. Like I think it's probably whoever's the number 2.
No AJ Abbott.
Well, you just said you were pretty disgraceful to him last podcast. So he said he would never touch the football, except for
that'd be a breakout, man. Let me tell you what, he's a sleeper.
He wasn't even your first ball flipper guy. I mean, it's probably a sleeper pick to break out. I mean, quarterback, I don't even know if I'm going to give one. It's probably whoever's the number 2 quarterback, to be honest. Running back, I think I probably think higher than you do on Irving. Bucky Irving, the transfer from Minnesota. I really could see a scenario where he's like clear-cut number 2 in some games, playing a lot more than people expect. That would be my pick there. It would have probably, before the Irving edition, been Noah Whittington, because I just think these transfers are pretty high caliber players. But I'm picking a player who hasn't been on campus yet. But I think Irving's a good choice. Would you go the same pick there
for running back? Yeah, I'd probably throw him in there. I was kind of thinking Jordan James, just because I really liked his highlights, or I like this tape coming out of high school.
Right.
But Irving definitely has the biggest potential, especially only being like a second year guy transferring to Oregon after almost 700 yards offense at Minnesota last year. It's pretty good. But I still think he's number 3 on the depth chart. I think I'm just totally sold on the Byron Cardwell, Sean Dollars. I think I've seen enough during spring camp where I think those guys are the clear-cut 1 and 2. And maybe we see Irving in fall camp, but I just fall immediately in love. And it's like, all right, he's number 0. He's the best one on the field. He's everything. He's more than number 1. So we'll see.
Yeah, I probably think there's a higher chance that happens than you do, is what it sounds like. Okay, so receiver. There's a lot of choices here, and a sleeper pick means somebody. So I'm going to just dismiss all the guys who had awesome spring games from this and the guys who come back. So, like, I'm not considering Hudson. I'm not considering Thornton, McGee, Franklin, or Coda. I think I missed that one. Those 5 guys, I'm like, they're not sleepers, so I'm not including them. So I'm including kind of like your 6 through 9 guys. I think it's 6 through 10 when Casper gets here. I'm going to go with Kyler Casper. I'm like,
oh, nice.
As again, not as a number 1, as we jokingly said, because we're pretty careful with some of these rankings. I don't want to like suggest, like, when I'm saying Bucky Irving might get breakout player, I'm talking like 700-800 yards. I'm not saying he runs for like 1,500 yards and is your leading rusher. And for Kyler Casper, I'm not saying he has probably more than even 300 yards. But like, I think he could show up and be your 5th or 6th guy maybe, and be in that 2 deep and make contributions earlier than people expect, just based upon his athleticism and kind of this, like, I think his skill set is most reminiscent of like a combination of Thornton and Coda in terms of like the length and like the catch radius and being able to make plays like that. So like maybe there's a mix of those 2 guys, but I think he has a chance to come in and contribute. So I'll go with Kyler.
I think that's a good one. I don't know, when you were going off of like, I'm getting rid of Dante and Seth and Troy and all those guys, the list, this isn't that long after it. It was really like, Justice Lowe, Josh Delgado, and Kyler Casper, and Isaiah Crocker, Isaiah Brevard too, as like options for a breakout.
Brevard was
I like the Casper pick. I like Justice Lowe. I don't see time for him this year, straight up. It's just good. It's going to be hard. I see an easier path for Kyler Casper because of his size and his skill and his athleticism more than I do for somebody like Justice Lowe or maybe even Isaiah Crocker and Josh Delgado. Isaiah Brevard, I think, would have been my 1 and 2 between him and Casper. I think those two have a better options, again, because of their size and their versatility more than anything else.
Same. And to Justice Lowe, I'll make a quick point here. I will kind of pimp out some content we've been doing. I've been doing a early enrollee freshman kind of like what they did in spring story. I wrote about Justice Lowe, I think, on Saturday. One of the points I made, it's a really small one, but I think it's like he was listed at 6'1" on his 24/7 Sports profile, and I think he's like 5'10", 5'11". Just like that's my sense on that, and I hope that doesn't come across like disrespectful. But like you watch him through drills, and he's not close to like Troy Franklin's height, who's another guy who's like 6'1", 6'2". Like he's much closer to the Chris Hudson and Josh Delgado kind of height. So, not that that's a huge. That's not like why I didn't include him, but that's a kind of just an explanation for why maybe I have some skepticism. It's like I kind of thought he was going to be a little bit longer physically than he is. He's a little more compact. All right, tight end. Probably one of the guys who's been hurt. I would say like between Herbert or Cam would be the pick, but like I'm not super confident either, just because I haven't seen him do enough to really know. So I'm not even sure I want to pick one there. Offensive line, kind of feel the same way. Like maybe Marcus Harper is a guy who I think, or Feope, are guys who I think had strong springs who haven't really played much, but I just don't like Connerly. I don't see really a path, so I don't want to like. I don't really know if it's worth picking a sleeper, and breaking out as an offensive lineman is also something that like we can talk about. Somebody had a great season as an offensive lineman, but for most fans, they just would never register. Like unless a guy comes out and unless Connerly just like shows up in his Penei Sewell immediately, no one's going to be like, what a great breakout year for an offensive lineman. That doesn't really happen. So I really have a hard time picking somebody here. So I'll say Harper just because I thought he looked really good this spring, but there's a pretty like he's probably your fourth or fifth interior lineman on your depth chart. So like, I mean, in terms of like, you've got your starting three and then you've got Jackson, Powers, Johnson, and possibly Dawson could be the one who'd fit in. So I don't see him really playing a ton. So I don't know if there's a good pick there either.
I mean, I like that you mentioned that the Marcus Harper and Feope Lalu, because I do think that they would deserve to be mentioned. There's not really a good pick. There really isn't, just like you said. I'm still sad that Jonathan Dennis transferred. I was really high on him before. If he were still here, hypothetically, I do think he or maybe even Jalen Jeffers would be the answer, just if they had strong spring camps. But yeah, there's not a clear-cut number one answer here, which is difficult. But I guess it's probably like a Dawson or maybe a Jackson Powers Johnson, because he was hurt a lot last season, and now fans and the country as a whole will probably get to see him more on the field than not, hopefully.
Yeah, I didn't even include him as a breakout because I kind of already thought he and Dawson had sort of arrived. But again, that's where I have a hard time knowing like what do the fans think of an offensive lineman, because we're paying so close attention to this, and we kind of already know Dawson and Jackson were really good last year, and they play again like Dawson played like 360 snaps and Jackson played like 180 or 200 snaps. So like these guys have played a lot. So I was like, I'm thinking if Jackson Powers Johnson qualifies, I'll pick him.
I think you might. Is it my turn? Defense?
Yeah. Do the defense.
All right. I guess we'll start with defensive lineman. I was thinking about starting with safety, but I went through it in my brain. I didn't really like it. So we'll start with defensive lineman. This is a tough one because I feel like there aren't a lot of potential new guys to break free because of the depth in the defensive line. Keanu Williams had a really good spring. He was always with the two deep, but then you look at it and say, was he with the two deep because he deserved to be with the two deep, or was he with the two deep because three of your best four defensive linemen were out? And so then you kind of wonder, it's like, all right, well, were the first team linemen in spring camp, were they going to be on the second team? So it's a tough one for me. I'm going to go with somebody who's almost like a little established already in Trevin Mai, and say that I think he's going to be a breakout guy. Again, I'm not sure what our good friend Robbie FZ 450 means by a sleeper pick or a breakout guy. But that's going to be my answer, because I thought I was actually really impressed with him all spring long. He was with the number ones the entire spring. Last year he came into fall camp and spring camp, obviously, and he was like, 40 pounds heavier than he had been since coming on campus. He looked the part. He was primarily only on rundowns. He had a couple moves this spring on passing downs where I thought that he could actually be a playmaker on a passing down, opposite of DJ Johnson, which I didn't expect. It just wasn't in my brain that this guy was going to be somebody who could help on a passing down. So I'm going with Trevin Mai. I think Jake Shipley could be another option. Keanu Williams, like I just mentioned. Honestly, I might even put Sam Taimani in here because I don't feel like enough people know about him. But he was really, really, really good during spring camp. He wreaked some havoc.
Yeah, I think Taimani, if he again, some of this is like who qualifies. I was just looking this up because I was curious. And unfortunately, my browser's trying to load the one tab that is important to me. But Trevin Ma'ai is my like no-brainer pick because I don't think people give him enough credit for how good he can be. I was just trying to compare this because I think he and Swinson probably have next to, and we didn't even include Swinson because we consider him like already established, but I think he and Swinson probably had like almost identical statistical seasons a year ago. I'm trying to pull this up here, but it's not loading the Braden Swinson tab, so now I'm going to open up the overall stats and go from there. But like, I had 20 tackles and two and a half tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks last year. This is a guy who like already has played quite a bit, but I don't think the fan base is like totally understanding of who he is yet. And I think he's somebody who can be more like he had a great swim move in the spring game.
No, dude, he had a spin move too. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, so Swinson had 24 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and I had 20 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. So like from a production perspective, these guys are pretty even, and yet Swinson is talked about, rightfully so, as potentially like the best pass rusher on the team, and I think Ma'ai doesn't get a lot of conversation. So I'm on Team Trevin. We already know this. I've been there for a couple of years, but I think especially this spring, and again, when I talked about Justice Lowe and his height, what is he, 6'1"? Is he 5'11"? We don't have heights. Trevin Ma'ai, we don't have weights, and I was surprised. I was just looking at what they listed him at last year. Do you know what they listed him at last year, by the way, Jared?
255.
267, which is higher than I thought, because I think he's put on at least 20 pounds. So he might be like 280, 285. I had said I thought he was like 275. I think he's put on like 15 to 20 pounds, and I might be overstating that. Tosh talked about how much weight he put on too. He didn't give a number, but like I think
impressive.
I think my eye's much bigger than he was a year ago, and maybe he really is 275, 280, but he's physically changed his body quite a bit over the last 4 years, 3 years.
If he were 275, 280, he's listed as like 220 on his recruiting profile.
Isn't that incredible?
So that's like 50 pounds in 3 years. So
yeah, he's had a huge body change. Well, and the thing with him out of high school, we've did a lot of Trevin Ma'ai talk. We should move on to other positions.
Welcome into the Odds and Audibles podcast. This is about Trevin Ma'ai.
This is a 30-minute Trevin Ma'ai rant. No, but the thing I was going to say was when he was in high school down in Nevada.
Thank you.
Yeah. He was at Bishop Gorman, and I talked to his position coach there, and I think he had like I have it in a story. I wish I had it pulled up. I should have been more prepared for this rant I wasn't expecting to do, I guess. But I did a profile, and he had like the fastest shuttle time on the team, and that was a team that had like three like like major Power 5 skill position receivers on it, and he was quicker in those kind of drills. So like the coach was basically saying if he can add weight, he could be really disruptive, and he's added a lot of weight. I don't think he's obviously still that explosive, but like I think he's still a really good high-end athlete that probably gets overlooked a little bit. So that's like sorry, that was way too much Trevin Ma'ai talk, but I'm leading the way there.
Don't tell Bill Belichick about the three cone shuttle drill. That's his bread and butter. That's why they drafted a 24-year-old in the first round. But I digress. Anyways, we're going to move on to linebackers. Or should we go? Yeah, I just threw all the defensive linemen in together. I don't care if it was edge or D-line. Linebackers, this is another tough one. There's a couple guys I could see breaking out. Part of me wanted to go like Jackson the Duke because he was hurt all last year, was hurt in 2020, and didn't really show off who he could be until this year's spring game. I feel like that's kind of an easy out. Jeffrey Boss is another one where it's kind of an easy out. There's some really good players in this linebacking position. Tough one. I'm going to go with Adrian Jackson. It's going to be one of the Jacksons. It's either going to be Adrian or Devon Jackson as a guy who kind of steps up and is somebody who's a sleeper pick to kind of have a good season, like a good depth perspective season. Adrian Jackson is in another position change. He's now at inside linebacker. which I think suits his body type and his skill set really well. Really quick twitch guy, not the best in coverage, but if he plays the Mack linebacker position, like with Noah Sewell and Jackson LeDuc, and whoever he's with plays the money where they go out into coverage, I think that could really benefit him. And Devon Jackson is just a freak athlete. If he's on the field, he's going to make a play. He's somebody we didn't see a whole lot of, but just by his athleticism and his, I don't know, what he came like in his overall recruit rating and his talent level. He was with the 2 deeps or the 3 deeps all spring long, basically. He's somebody who I could see making plays on the field, like from sideline to sideline. Just somebody who's an all-out, all athleticism, all running somebody down type of linebacker, which in the future I think he could really, really turn into something special.
Yeah, I see Jackson's contributions coming on defense more in like 23 and beyond. Once like we haven't really talked a ton about it, but there's a chance Sewell and Flo
are gone
after this year, and Jackson could be someone to really watch there. I think he and Taggart would be great picks for like special teams breakout guys, honestly, because I think the athleticism
Devin for sure
on like a kickoff coverage thing. And Jackson ran 10.54, Taggart ran 10.7 something in the 100. Like these guys are athletic. These guys are really fast. I'll go LeDuc. I also just because I don't know if I've given this take before, but I've written it. Like I really think if he's healthy last year and everybody else, the rest of the injuries fall the way they do, Jeffrey Boss is currently working at nickel, and we're talking about LeDuc and Flo can Flo beat out LeDuc, who was this really impressive starter for like 12 games a year ago. And LeDuc is somebody who had like 85 tackles, and as everybody's kind of like, God, I mean, Flo's like really exciting, but this LeDuc guy, we know what we've got here. He's proven, and the conversation's totally different. Instead, it's like,
hot take.
Well, and I don't even think it's that hot because, like, the unfortunate thing of that inside linebacker. I mean, maybe the hot part is that people are questioning Flo, which I would lean towards Flo in a heartbeat because I think he's just a freak. But I just think the whole narrative around LeDuc and Bossa and Flo and how they're challenging each other hypothetically to start would be really different because LeDuc would be considered a very much like a fixture of last year's defense, I think, if he was healthy. And Bossa would probably not even be playing the position because he wouldn't have been required to move over. Or maybe he would have moved over and then they would have just been like, well, LeDuc is so good. Like last year, what they wanted to have happen was Bossa help out a little bit, but keep the door open, I think, to play some nickel and have Keith Brown be the person who fills in full time. But Keith Brown had injury problems, didn't perform quite as well. I think the second part because of the injury problem. And so Brown never really emerged. That opened the door for Bossa to be a dude, and Bossa was a dude. So
Bossa was a dude.
I like LeDuc a lot. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I really like LeDuc too. I think that's an interesting perspective. I don't know. It's hard for me to say that that's how it would have gone. But I do really like Jackson LeDuc. I do think that he's, I don't know, when you watch him play, he's like a perfect linebacker. He's exactly what you want to see out there. So I think he could be. I just didn't really want to go with him because of how good he was at the spring game. I feel like I just wanted to have Adrian Jackson. Just wanted to show him some love, I guess. But it's all right.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of tired of saying Adrian Jackson's going to have a breakout season because it's just I've said it.
It's been a lot of years, yeah.
And that's no disrespect to him because I think he's an incredible athlete. Just at some point, it doesn't happen.
I'll carry the weight on my shoulders this year, and then be thoroughly disappointed. Thank you, and be thoroughly disappointed at the end of the year. I'll move on to cornerbacks. This one, it's going to be one of the freshmen. I think it's as simple as that. Or it's going to be like Avante Dickerson or Darren Barkins. But there's like 7 names to choose from. Maybe. Probably more like 5. This is a tough one because there's really all of these players could be breakout guys. I mean, Christian Gonzalez was good at Colorado, and Dante Manning has been pretty good at Oregon. But none of them have had like a star season. None of them have been like a number 1 corner, maybe even a number 2 corner. So any one of these guys you could say here, and I think that could fit into a breakout because they haven't had the experience or they haven't had like seasons to match up with it. I don't know. I guess I'll go Dickerson because he's been good. That's all I got. That's about it.
Yeah, I think Dante Manning's the choice. If again, this is a weirdly is he a sleeper to be a breakout? He's certainly not someone who's established. I just think the talent is so evident when you actually get to see him healthy. The problem is that last part is he's not been healthy really throughout his career. He was pretty healthy last year. Had some good moments, had some not so good moments too. If you go back and watch, especially some of the stuff when he was playing one-on-one on the outside at some kind of rough at times. But I thought he looked great to start spring, and then he got hurt. And
Yep.
I really think like the talent has always been there. It's just a health thing and kind of rounding out some of like he's another one of those guys like you mentioned Kamari Terrell with the crazy athleticism. Like Manning is that kind of athleticism with quite a bit more advanced coming in, but still with somebody who you knew needed to be like technically worked on, like to improve. I think if assuming full health, I think he's potentially going to be really impressive and people are going to be pleased. I think there's a lot of concern, as there should be, about corner at the moment. And I think if Manning steps up and develops into the kind of guy he was when he was a 5-star recruit, people are going to feel, I think, quite a bit better. Dickerson is a really good choice as well because I just think he gets overlooked sometimes. I've had this take before on this podcast, but people get excited by the 2022 recruit rankings of the Tuckers and Florence, but then forget Dickerson was, I think, ranked higher
than all of them. Yeah,
been here a year longer. So why are we suggesting one of the Jaleels is going to be better than Dickerson when Dickerson was a better recruit and a year older? So,
but is Manning a sleeper pick?
That's what I don't know.
3 years.
I don't know if it qualifies for that. Well, he hasn't really played that much is the thing. So,
but he
hasn't broken out yet. I don't know. I mean, the qualifications for this are kind of ambiguous.
They're up in the air.
If he doesn't qualify, I'll join you with Dickerson.
Okay. Yeah, I've been all on the Dante Manning hype train this entire spring. I've been saying that like once he clicks in the spring or in the fall, it could be a real like a number one corner for Oregon because of his athleticism and his skills. But is that a breakout? I don't know. But I'm going to move on to safeties, which is another one where I kind of just throw my hands up and be like, oh, somebody, they could do it. I'd pick Damon David, but he's in the transfer portal, which a lot of people were not happy about, still aren't happy about. I think it happened last week. Yet my article on DuckTerritory.com is still getting new comments, which is impressive. So that one stung a lot for a lot of people. It stings for my breakout rankings here, that's for sure. I think Brian Addison could be a pick here.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't really broken out. But is he a sleeper? Is the question. Because he's been a number one safety all spring. And we've known about him for forever.
But I don't know if everybody this is what qualifies. I don't know if everybody knows that. Like I think he and Triquez are really easy answers.
Yeah.
Just like in terms of breakout, because I think one or both of them will start and play a lot, and I think one or both of them are going to be pretty darn good and potentially like lead the team in interceptions. Be really impressive, the back end guys. But have they broken out yet? I don't think so. Are they sleepers? I mean, if you read our practice reports, they're not. But how many people actually? I know the numbers based upon the page views.
Oh, we know the numbers.
We know those numbers, but like how many people are, taking that information and going, oh, he's already a known. I think they both qualify, and I think I'll take Quez slightly ahead of Addison because I think Addison's going to be challenged by. Eventually, I think what'll happen is Bennett Hill's going to be your nickel. Bennett will end up playing boundary, and that'll challenge Addison to start. And I think Bridges will probably be your field safety.
I think eventually that's
my guess.
That should be how it goes. Because if you want the best 11 guys in the field for defense, Bennett Williams needs to be out there, and so does Jamal Hill, and so does Triquez Bridges. And whether that means moving Triquez to deep safety and battling Addison, or if that means moving Triquez to cornerback and giving them some depth and versatility, maybe it's that. Triquez was good at points last year, very similar to Dante Manning at cornerback. Good at points, not good at others.
Yep.
So it's a tough situation, but sure, I'll go with Brian Addison for my breakout safety.
I think we've exhausted all the position groups.
I think we've exhausted the audience too.
Okay.
which is exactly why we're going to take a quick little break. So everybody could pause the podcast and come back whenever you like, because we're going to take a quick little break. All right. Welcome back in to the Odds and Audibles podcast. We're currently in the middle of the mailbag. We are just going through a sleeper position on each team or on each position this season. And we're going to march right into question number 4 following the break from Tim Steege 12. Sounds like a Tom Brady reference. I appreciate it, Tim. Tim asks, aside from Kayvon Thibodeau going approximately where he was expected to go, quote, although there was a lot of smoke for him to drop, end quote, or end parentheses, sorry, my brain's not working. What happened with all the other potential Oregon draft picks, question mark? Is it a matter of bad advice, or is it something else in the mix? Hashtag Odds and Audibles. Tim, thank you again for using the hashtag Odds and Audibles. What happened to all the other Oregon draft picks? Well, they weren't draft picks. They were undrafted. And I think it was very surprising. I think it was very surprising to me. I have been the mock draft guy at DuckTerritory.com because I can't get enough of mock drafts. So whenever there's a basketball one with an Oregon player, we'll be getting that soon. I already did a 2023 mock draft with an Oregon player. So I went through all of them, and they all had the ones that went like 7 rounds. They all had Verone McKinley and Mykel Wright being drafted. A few of them would have like Devin Williams. A few of them, that's about as far as it would go. Frankly, there weren't a lot of NFL guys on Oregon's roster last season. And I think that's the main part of this. There was Kayvon Thibodeau. I still think Verone McKinley's an NFL guy.
Yeah.
But I do think that he's hurt a lot from a draft perspective by his height and his other intangibles, his athleticism, compared to somebody and he's in his positional value. He's a safety, which I know is an important position on the field. But if I'm drafting a team, safety is not the most important position on the field to me. You can get somebody who's as talented as Verone McKinley as a safety without having to use your draft capital resources to take him. That's exactly what the Dolphins did by signing him after the draft. What happened with Mykel Wright and the other players, I just don't think that they were athletically there. I think they were worth taking a flyer on, maybe in the later 6th or 7th round of the draft, but teams didn't. And I don't think it was a matter of bad advice. I think it could be their time has come. I mean, Devin Williams was in school for 5 years. Mykel Wright was in school for 4. I think all of these guys have already graduated. It could just be that they no longer wanted to be in school. I think that they all put together probably their best seasons this past season of what they could have been, and it just wasn't enough by NFL standards. I think it's kind of as simple as that.
Kind of hate that we judge these. Okay, first off, bad advice part, I just think is impossible to know exactly what the advice is. We're not in those rooms. But also, there were 3 players that went early. Verone has been here 5 years. I think Kale's only here 3. He's a freshman 19, 20, 21. Devin was 5 years like Verone.
Mm-hmm.
Devin Williams has already talked about the fact that he wanted to make some money for his family. I think he had did his girlfriend have a child or something like that? His mom, there's a bunch of stuff that was going on with him off the field. So I think that's understandable. He wanted to try to make a living. Go for it. Verone was an All-American last year. He led the nation.
It's hard to get better than that.
What's he going to gain by coming back? I don't get what's that? I just see so many of these arguments that feel really lazy and without really any thought put into it of like, oh, these kids got bad advice. It's like, well, no, sometimes kids are ready to go to move on from college and go pro, and there's not much more they can get collegiately. And now they're going to give themselves an opportunity a year sooner to make money when there's a finite number of years that they can go out and make money. Because guess what? Entering as a 22-year-old rookie is probably better than entering as a 23-year-old rookie. You might not get drafted, so there's no guarantee money, and I understand that part. But I just think these get sort of skewed a little bit. McHale would be the only one I think you can have some questions on, in part because his career is really weird. 2019,
Super
he was
strange.
Awesome. You saw the speed. I thought he was going to run like 4.4. He had that 100-yard kickoff against USC. He was flying. You saw some of the plays in coverage where I thought he was awesome. In 2020, his first year as a starter, he was first team all conference over players that now went like day two. Like Kyler Gordon and Trent McDuffie were a bit behind him as the same age players. And then those guys ended up being first round. I think Gordon was a second round pick. Like these guys ended up being high draft picks. McHale, by the sophomore year, McHale was like on even footing, if not a little ahead of them, at least in terms of conference recognition. And then last year he was honorable mention. Those two were first team. So his career is weird. The speed stuff was really surprising to me because I thought he was more athletic than he showed up to be. And so I look at this and go, I think people are, and I've had a little time to think about this. I think people are disappointed that only one player was drafted. I get that. People then try to like make it reductive to these players like they've been sold bad goods and that they're somehow basically made bad decisions. I think that's really a silly argument to be made most of the time. I think Verone and Devin had been here a really long time. What I don't think coming back benefits their stock that much. Maybe Devin a slight amount, maybe, I don't know. And McHale's career is weird. You could probably convince me that if he came back for another year and somehow improved his speed with Jaworski Beckham, who's a pretty renowned speed coach, maybe he goes higher. But I'm also kind of like, he was here 3 years. He played a lot. There's a lot of he had a lot of downs on tape. Some of it was really good. Some of it clearly wasn't that good. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of NFL teams decided that they thought other corners were better, and that's just too bad for him. But I don't think that there's a bad advice thing. Like I just think that becomes so convenient and becomes kind of the prevailing narrative, like that, oh, these kids were convinced like against their will they shouldn't have gone. No, these kids wanted to make some money. Now they're getting an opportunity to go do that.
Yeah, now they're really getting an opportunity to go make some money. And they're still going to go play football. It's just not going to be for the University of Oregon. There are plenty of undrafted free agents. I think it's just the fact that Mykael Wright could have had – well, technically all these guys could have come back except for George Moore. I think that kind of sits unwell with fans, the fact that they could have come back. And you look
Johnny
at this
Johnson couldn't come back either.
No, yeah, that makes sense too. He was here for quite a while. I think you look at this year's team, and it's like a lot of fans think that they could use a Devin Williams, they could use a Verone McKinley, they could use a Mykael Wright for positional value and need. But yeah, I mean, at one point, enough is enough, and these guys are going to go off and try to make it in the professionals. And that's it. It's not bad advice. That's their life that they want to live. Some of them could just be done with college. Yeah, they're just done with it, and they don't. There's no need for them in their minds to go get a master's or something like that because they're going to try and go play football, and they have a good support system around them, and they listen to the people that they trust and they love and they have confidence in. So they make their own decisions just like we make ours. It's just that they're put on the national stage and people can judge against them, unlike our decisions that are more personal, more private, that are only judged by maybe ourselves. So I don't. It's just it's just how it is, and the NFL is really, really picky. It may not seem like it a lot, but I don't think any of these Oregon players, except for Kayvon Thibodeau, had elite traits. I don't think anyone has a single elite trait to an NFL talent. And that's why they weren't undrafted compared to Kayvon Thibodeau, who had many, 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 many elite traits. All right. Should we do this last one, Erik?
Let's do the last one. You had an angle on this, and I'll try to think of something.
All right. Our final question today comes from Duck for Quacks. Thank you, Duck for Quacks. It's been a while. He asks, now that spring practices are all wrapped up, what is your cowherdiest take? It's a fun word to say, cowherdiest take, that we may all use to quote over social media all summer long, hashtag odds and audibles. Thank you, Duck for Quacks, for using odds and audibles in the hashtag. I think it's pretty simple on this one. Coach Kenny Dillingham, probably 5-6 weeks ago at this point, he said that Oregon is the best, basically said that Oregon is the best college town west of the Mississippi. And like, this was a place that you used or that you come to win championships. I'm going to look up the whole the whole quote here so I don't really mess with it. Oh, yes, here it is. Quote, "This is the only place west of Texas that has a mindset of the South when it comes to football. If you're out west, this is the only real college town that can win championships." Now that is a quote. And I'm sure when it came out, I'm sure our good friends on our other 24/7 message boards across the West Coast certainly had their day in the sun with that quote. But it's a good Colin Cowherd quote that I think, very similar to USC just had what I've been hearing, the best practice of all time. It's a quote like that. So I think that's a pretty easy answer. I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of other options here, Erik.
Well, that quote stood out. Just a background that's kind of funny. It was like Kenny had been swarmed, by everybody, and then a bunch of, I think it was Quarterbacks Day maybe, and so like Ty and Bo and Jay were all talking, and so Kenny, it was like literally me and Kenny and one other person, and I just was kind of like, how do you like? It was usually I try to come in with some like hard hitting questions, and this was like, how are you liking Eugene? And he was like, oh, my wife just had our first child, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow, that's cool. How's everything getting kind of set up here? And then he went into that quote, and I was like, wow, okay, that was not where I thought we were going to go. That's a great quote. To the question, I think of Cowherd as just like really overgeneralizing everything. And so my guess is if you wanted to really overgeneralize the hierarchy in the Pac-12, you would first ignore Utah just because that's what national people do all the time, which people in Salt Lake can't stand. And I think at this point they're not as ignored now, but like most years it's like USC and Oregon or Washington, which either team is better, and it becomes they overgeneralize the strengths. And I think this would be overgeneralized to USC has an incredible offense, but they can't play defense. And Oregon has a crappy offense, but they can really play defense because that's what the coaches are known for. And Cowherd would make it, it would simplify the Pac-12 down to, is it going to be USC's offense or Oregon's defense that wins a championship? And I think that would be his analysis if you're being really overgeneralizing the whole thing, which is unfair because I think Utah's still probably the best team.
I think that's a good one. I realistically, if you want to have a Colin Cowherd take, you just talk about USC. That's all.
Right.
You don't talk about the rest of the Pac-12. The Pac-12 does not matter. USC, fight on. You lead into your tweet. You have the Trojan fight song going on in your tweet somehow. And that's exactly what you're going to have as your take all summer long.
And then it becomes something where Cowherd's like, I know most people say defense wins championships, but not when that offense is not against offenses like that. And that's the angle. That would be my Cowherd take of, it comes down to USC's got this incredible offense. Oregon's got this great defense, but I know most people say defense wins championships, but have you seen that USC offense? Have you seen Caleb Williams? Have you seen all these receivers? Have you seen Travis Dye, who was on Oregon's team? They took their best offensive player and brought him over there.
He didn't even want to stay. He went to USC.
That would be
he knew who was going to win. Yeah, it's going to be something like that.
That would be the tenor of it, would be my guess.
Well, I can't wait to place like a futures bet on Colin Cowherd USC championship predictions and set the over-under at like 3.5 this season and watch the money come in.
We weren't going to bring this up because I didn't even tell you about this, but I saw PFF did its way too early top 25, and I just found this to be strange, a little bit surprising. They had Utah 8th, USC 9th, Oregon 25th in their top 25.
Nice.
Like, I get Utah 8. USC seems pretty high at 9. I know they're really talented. I just don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm, and I just think Oregon at 25 seems low. Like, I think those teams should be right next to each other, like 13 to 15 to 18 range.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Utah should be the front runner. I'd put them top 10. But USC, I just don't know anything about the defense. I know their offense sounds magnificent on paper, and maybe they get Jordan Addison as well and kind of go overkill. Mm-hmm. But we've been watching USC have tremendous offensive talent on paper for the last 6 years, and it hasn't really amounted to anything. But we have their defense, except for that one Rose Bowl victory with our good friend Sam Darnold, who still sees the ghosts of the New England Patriots all the time. We've seen it with the high-profile offense of the first-round picks there, and maybe they get Jordan Addison, make it even better. But I got to see it, man. I got to see it on paper. I got to see how it works. And I also have to see how Oregon's offense works against real competition and not just their own guys. I think Oregon is probably higher than 25, you said it was?
Yeah.
I think that's higher than 25, but I don't know if I'd go any lower than 16. I think that's a good position to start. I mean, considering what they lost and considering that they have to bring in all these new things.
You think they're in what? Sorry, 16 is the high end, you think?
I think 16 is the highest I'd go with Oregon,
You're
at
like
least to start the season.
16 through 22 is your range probably right now.
I'd go a little tighter. I'd say like 16 to 19, 16 to 20. I think that's a perfect little window.
Okay, fair enough. I really don't have an opinion because I would really need to sit down and mark down who I think is better and why to do it. But that feels appropriate, considering where Oregon, like if we do it from the perspective of Oregon is usually ranked around a certain range, but my confidence level going into a season, 16 through 20 feels pretty solid. And I could be convinced by fall camp that I'm way under appreciating things or way over appreciating things. I just think there's a lot we don't know yet, even though I am really encouraged by a lot of the things we saw in spring.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for us at the Odds and Audibles podcast. Today was another fantastic mailbag. We've got 56 minutes for you guys. If we didn't answer all your questions to your satisfactory, please, yell at us on Twitter. I'm sure we're going to reply. But for Jared Mack and Erik Skopil, thank you for listening to the Odds and Audibles podcast. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, folks.